Hmm. Oh, hello there. Well, welcome back. I was just reorganizing, making sure everything was ready for tonight. It's a very interesting one for today, for this episode. Like the last episode, we touched up on an individual named Admiral Byrd, Bob, B-Y, hold on. Yes, Admiral Richard Byrd. Admiral Richard Byrd, who also explored the North Pole and was mentioned in the Journey of Agatha from last episode. But this time, we're going to go south. Instead of hearing about parts of the North Pole, why not we look into the South Pole and see what he might have found? Maybe it might be just a conspiracy. Maybe a theory. Or it could be more than you believe. Shall we go and see? I think we shall. Let us begin with Admiral Richard Byrd. We begin this tale a bit of time before the Cold War. They call it the Cold War. So sometime before then. Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, Arctic Expedition and Evolution of America's Strategic Interest in the Polar Regions. So not just Antarctica that we'll be hearing about, we might be hearing more about the North Pole as well. How interesting. Let us find out what's in this. If I can grab the damn thing. My bad. Oh, alright, fine. You just go over there. Pain in my ass. Alrighty, and it seems that these are a little bit brighter than usual on my eyes. Oh, this is going to be fun to read. I'm not joking, actually. They're a bit more whiter than I'm used to. But I'm sure we can do this. Yes, I'm just going to have to blow it up to a certain degree so that way I can actually... It's not that I can't read it, it's just... Whoever published this article... I'm sorry, you could have used a bit more of the more bolder print, not the thin versions. Ugh, yuck tots. Okay, the Earth's polar regions have enjoyed a strategic reticence over the past decade. In the Arctic, as ice caps recede, and man, this is really hard to read actually, navigation through the Northwest Passage facilities and projections, commercial and military power, geopolitical. My lord, who in the... This is actually irritating me. This is actually hard for me to read. So apologies if this takes a bit longer than usual. I have to actually look a bit harder for once. Stupidness. Confrontations loom on the horizon, remnants of a bygone Cold War era. Indeed, the amount of stake for the United States, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Denmark, Russia, and now China at the Earth's northern pole has led to a steady escalation of force one Putin dubbed the new Arctic Great Game. How intriguing. I actually never heard of this little forte. Has anybody else heard about this in their history books? I don't think not. Like I said, they're always hiding things from us. That's why we have to look into it sometimes. And the crazy thing is, you find more than you're bargaining for. Great power competition on the Arctic, on Antarctica too, is on the rise. There are strategic rivals increasingly arrest territories' claims, content for natural natural resources, and expand their scientific influence of the Earth's southern extreme. How exciting. We get to see how something unfolds upon the sections of one of the most barren areas of all of the world, Antarctica. Shall we continue? These multi-nation geostrategic operations, both in the Arctic and Antarctic, so northern and southern, are not historically unprecedented. In other words, they're not really in your damn history books, sadly. Like, what we're about to go over is actually not in most, it's not taught. It wasn't at least taught to me. It wasn't, is what I'm saying. This is actually the first time going over parts of this because I haven't looked into this at all. I'm learning with you guys. From the time humans began pushing the boundaries of the polar exploration on the early 20th century, consented nation-states have sought to translate polar presence into the strategic advantage. Historical and Earth's poles housed marine life harvested by the world's great powers for the ports and oils that held grease and wheels that turned the Industrial Revolution. More recently, scientists have utilized polar data to better understand the Earth's changing global climate war. Just like how they're trying to use that as a option. Oh, did I say that? Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I'm going to add one little fucking point. We used to call it weather. It never was global warming. It never was climate. It was weather. So just FYI, this little war has been going on since the 1940s. Because it's all propaganda. Moving on. And if you disagree with me, I don't give a damn. Where the bollocks did I stop? Here we go. Climate war. Oh, climate-war. Still, they're trying something along those lines. Just a little late. 2 has been fought across the subarctic islands. According to the several historians, World War II was waged partly in the Arctic. World War III was long assumed would be. Wow. So they were trying to state that World War III could have potentially gone into the Arctic. I know we're at a bit of a stake right now upon the world's collusions. But I will add this on that notion of World War III. Not yet. My friends, please heed me on this one little thing. I know we just began this article, but I must add something. It's been bugging me, because we've been hearing so much about what's going on in particular regions around the world right now. But on this little notion of World War III notioned in this little article, I will add, we're not there yet. It's not going to happen the way you think. Because it already started. I'll get on that later. Though this enduring assumption never materialized, the threat of global war did not influence American polar strategic thinking in the early years of the Cold War, as the United States assumed an increasingly inimical posture, oh my goodness, I can't speak tonight, towards the Soviet Union after World War II. Polar experts like renowned naval pilot, the polar exploration Rear Admiral Richard E Byrd, there he is, made the American policymakers aware of the pitfalls of the ignoring the Arctic and Antarctic interests in the nation's long-term Planning. To the people like Byrd, Cold War intentions made the Arctic strategic region particularly for national security. Smart move. Indeed, the emergency of the United States as a global superpower in the aftermath of the World War II and the looming threat of nuclear war with the USSR underwere the polar regions with the immediate strategy significance, though the successful tests of submarine-launched nuclear-equipped Polaris missiles developed in the intercentennial long-range ballistic missiles in the 1960s reduced fears of the Soviets' invasion across the Arctic ice. For a brief period in the early Cold War, the U.S. Navy made a constant effort to push the envelope of the polar exploration and prepared itself for such military eventually. So pretty much they were making a bunch of strategic planning place points alongside in that section of the north of the Arctic north, which would pretty much be over next to Alaska, north of pretty much the northern sections of Canada. There is a section actually where Canada actually does teeter off into the actual top section of the earth. But they were just worried that Russia would be coming in from the top. Who knows? Maybe they still are. I digress. And like I said, this is going to be a bit of a long one. So please, bear with me. While most historians of the Cold War polar dimensions focus on an altered development, why the hell are they mentioning dimensions? Upon many of the articles I've been going over the last bit of time, a lot of them have been mentioning about dimensions. I know that this is probably meaning a different type of context, not the way of dimensional rifts or space travel upon that meaning. I'm sure it's just meaning upon the way of the landscape, actually, in this terminology for dimensions. Is probably just on landscape. Or, jeepers, I can't think of it. Starts with the damn G. It's not geometry, it's not geology. I'll figure it out eventually. Moving on. This art consummately and symbolic relationship of American Arctic exploration that it was hoped we... Why is this clip? You're pain in my ass. Hoped we enhance American polar capabilities in the advance of the war with the USSR, superheading the calls for the government-sponsored polar initiatives during the early Cold War. Admiral Byrd's arguments for developing the American presence in the polar regions, particularly Antarctica, grew more stagnant as the U.S. and Soviets' tension increased. From 1945 until his death in 1957, he died pretty damn young. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. It's just, he did die very young, actually. 57? I mean, he was born in the early 1000s. I'll catch you up on that one later, actually. I'll put that in the description of his actual age. Okay. Exhortations led to both successful and abortive government-sponsored Antarctic explorations. That was a mouthful. Ventures that not only underpinned a decade... Does that really say underpinned? Yes, it does. Of America's polar security policy, but also initiated a pattern of international scientific collaboration that guided all future civil military polar initiatives while seeing an oft-forgotten precedent for the militarization joint operations that characterize NATO's Arctic security policy today. Did my phone just go off? Un momento, por favor. Oh, I thought I had a phone call. Sorry, I did not have a phone call. I thought somebody was calling me. I don't know. Okay, moving on. Yep. Shall we continue? Richard Byrd and Americans' historical involvement in the polar regions. This should be interesting. I mean, we heard about Agatha with certain things. Let's see what more we can find out about the two poles of the North and South, and why they were used for certain things, and how they did it. Here we go. Through the 1867 purchase of Alaskan territory from Russia. I didn't know we bought it from Russia. That's a new one on me. Jumpstarted the United States' strategic interest, and this is clipping. I'm just going to do this. Back up a little bit. Interest in the Arctic. Is that the? Yes. The earliest American expeditions north of Canada and Siberia. Siberia? Oh, that. Sorry, I'm thinking about stuff. Wait, oh, that's gonna bug me. One moment. I need something. Oh, come on. There's gotta be one in here somewhere. Yes, I grabbed a globe out. Sorry, give me a moment. I gotta see something. Oh, I see. So, this is the northern section that we... Why am I turning still? Oh, I can't stand this thing. Okay. North of Canada. This was the area that they were... Whoop. Okay. We were trying to get more expert. Why is this thing... One moment. I said my controllers like to drift. I'm not joking about that. They really do. Okay. So, we were trying to get more exploration. Pretty much mostly on this point. They were this word. Which is understandable. I think I'm actually going to keep this globe. That's going to go right here on the desk. Whoop. Okay. Sorry about that. I was drawing a blank. I wanted to know where that was. Never resulted in a territorial claim. After the turn of the century, self-funded expeditions revived the public and political fascination in the polar regions, relying on dog sleds and what the hell is that? Inuit experts? Inuit? Inuit? I think I butchered that. Anyway. These early explorers slowly purchased farther afield into the Arctic, mapping new territories, testing the limits of human endurance, and gathering scientific data. The earliest claims for reaching the North Pole, one in 1908 and another in 1909 by two different American explorers, were both highly controversial. One on the other side of the world, British explorer Sir Ernst Shackleton and Robert Falcon Scott, as well as Norway's Roald Amundsen, became household names in the 1910s after leading famous that really say exorcism? Exorcism? No, it really actually says it. It's EXCURI. Okay, EXURSIONS. I think that meant to be explorations instead, because that didn't make any sense. Into Antarctica. Okay, pretty much they went into Antarctica. Well, more individuals were going into Antarctica. Self-funded, I might add. Their collective success initiated 2 decades of intermittent research and exploration. Lord, this is a mouthful on this article. Damn. Explorational expeditions of Earth's extremes. I mean, hell, of course, it's quite the extremes. It's bloody freaking coldest area on Earth. Both sections. And I'm sorry this is taking so long. Like I said, this article is going to be a bit longer. We're still in the first section. Jeez. Oh, well. Oh, boy, we're talking about the Great Depression. Oh, boy. The Great Depression temporarily froze these self-funded polar ventures. However, one American trailblazer pushed the envelope of the polar exploration in the interwar area, having completed the first powered flight over the North Pole in 1926, a feat that earned him the U.S. Congressional Medal of Honor. Wow, impressive. Oh, look, it's Byrd! Renowned naval aviator Richard E. Byrd, I was wondering when he was going to come back, channeled his public fame into financing the largest expedition to Antarctica ever attempted. In December of 1927, Byrd articulated the significance of his prospective journey. Man cannot claim mystery of the globe until he conquers the Antarctic continent. It is the last great challenge down there. Lies the greatest adventure left in exploring and aviation. He's not wrong. Yep. Come on, you pain on my fucking yachts. Anyway, continuing on. Founded by the corporation magnate, the public figureheads, Byrd conducted his first major Antarctic expedition between 1928 and 1930. The journey's success reinforced his celebrity status as America's most famous polar explorer, enabling him to return to the continent for a second expedition from 1933 to 1935. During these expeditions, Byrd established the first permanent American research base on the Ross Ice Shelf, dubbed Little America. How quaint. Because the first individual to fly over the South Pole, named a swath of Antarctic territory after his wife, Maria Byrd Land. Why the hell is her? Oh, she's got a double last name. This was the 1920s, but this was the early days. And spent 5 months managing a remote weather station alone, some 100 miles inland. Damn, alone. Woo! Power dog? 5 months? Woo! I hope he brought a lot of books. You didn't have really internet back then. Enduring temperatures as low as -60 Fahrenheit. That's still bloody cold. Of course it's cold. You freaking don't even want to step outside. As well as life-threatening carbon monoxide poisoning before an inspiring result saved his life. Oh, wow. That's interesting to know. Having ushered mechanical Antarctic exploration into the modern era, Byrd leveraged his position in the U.S. Navy and his myriad political connections to win the support of the presidential President Franklin D. Roosevelt, ugh, who approved Byrd's idea of using government sponsorship to bolster future expeditions. Byrd's federal appointments as head of the naval organization United States Antarctic Services in 1938, representing a significant shift in the nation's strategical evaluation of the Earth's poles, which government's resources by Byrd's disposal. The polar regions became aspirational sites of global power projections, technology, scientific and military testing grounds, and realms of the real imagination claims of territorial sovereignty. What does that mean, then? Does that mean that, by some random chance, that we might have tried to claim two of the most inhabitable spots on Earth? Or is it just a staple note upon which to just have a bit of ground there because of how hostile it truly is? Or is there more to the story and we're about to find out something juicy? Let's find out. U.S. Naval Antarctic Development Project Operation High Jump 1-1. Wait, hold on. I stand corrected. High Jump 1-1946 to 1947. High Jump, why does that sound so familiar? Isn't that a CIA file name for something? It is over 50 years. We can technically look over any declassified information you guys already have. In the aftermath of World War II, America's strategical plans oriented the nation's homeostatic defense policy around the dictum that the short dictum. I've never heard that word in my life. DICTUM. Not joking. That the hold on. Sorry, my play space isn't the best position right now, so yes, and I know I'm kind of in the way, but like I said earlier, it's a bit hard to read this because whoever typed this damn article up used very shitty, used the wrong letter size. You need to use a little bit bolder on your letters, whoever the hell you are who did this. And this is actually from, yes, this is dated in 2000 and cheapers. What was it? I think it was 2019 was this article. I know it's 2 years old, but this is still interesting to read. Continuing on. That the shortest route to the USSR dense industrial and population centers lay over the North Pole. Wow. That's a crazy plan. In 1946, the U.S. military initiated the Strategic Air Command SAC. The Air Command was created in 1946? I didn't know that. Whose bombers flew continuously missions along the northern borders of Alaska, Canada, Greenland, as determining against the Soviet attack. Greenland considered by some strategic to be the world's largest stationary aircraft carrier. Huh? Greenland? I mean, it is a pretty, it's an interesting location. Interesting that they called Greenland that. Housed their Air Force Base, a secret facility capable of projecting military power into the Arctic far easier than anywhere on the American mainland. Additionally, bases were constructed throughout the U.S., Canada, Arctic territories. I wonder, are those bases still active today? I think they probably are. It's probably why we've never had any complications. makes you wonder. Oh, look! I can actually read it a bit better. Why was the other one looking so shitty? I'm actually meaning that, like, I can actually read this. Maybe it was the screenshots. I take back what I said. I think it was the screenshots. I'm sorry. Jeez. Despite the Arctic pronounced in a prominence, my bad, in Americans' defense planning, policymakers and planners justify American presence in Antarctica and in similar economic, political, military, scientific terms. Antarctica expeditions, they argue, could deny foreign use of Antarctic land for military purpose, but be used to train naval engineering, aviation experts in polar techniques, and because a safe polar laboratory to test valuable minerals resources. Foremost among these thinkers, Byrd reflected in 1945, at a moment we do not feel, and I quote, at the moment we do not feel that we need the resources of Antarctica. Tomorrow we may. Today we are not stating our rightful claims to these territories. Tomorrow we may be sorry. Today we could make our holding or rights to them secure at little cost. Tomorrow we might have to pay dearly for them. End quote. I'm sure Byrd knew something that they probably didn't know, and that we probably still don't know into this day, actually. What is it upon which that he is actually claiming? Because it is still technically an unclaimed territory. Both of them are technically unclaimed territories. Mostly they're just for scientific research, they say. But there's much more to Antarctica than meets the eye, and I will get into that more later. But right now, we're just reading up and brushing up on what and of how and where this came into play for the World War and Cold War eras. Shall we continue? Washington took notes as the U.S. military expanded its Arctic deterrence efforts. Members of the Naval and State Departments met to discuss strategic aims for Antarctica. The establishment of very definite and aggressive policy of exploration and use in these areas. End quote. I probably butchered a word in there somewhere. They concluded, quote, is considered desirable by the United States, end quote. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. I'm sorry you're seeing my back most of the time right now, but I'm trying to read this out aloud for you all. With the approval, I'm actually going to move a little bit this way. With the approval of President Truman and Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, the Navy began planning the Antarctic Development Project, codenamed Operation High Jump, to be completed by 1946 and 1947. Byrd was appointed to lead the operation. And these are very interesting points. And we have some of the individuals that were involved in the creating of that area. We've got Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd is in the center, so he must be right there. Explains the plane to the following expedition members of their little America. Camp 6 during Operation High Jump, a naval Antarctic expedition conducted during the Australia summer of 1946 to 47. There's so much here. Ooh, a little big. I'm going to shrink that back down because I can actually read it now. Earlier, I think it was just the screenshots that I messed up on. My apologies again. Moving on. On December 2nd of 1946, United States Task Force 68, a fleet of 3 naval groups overseen by Admiral Byrd, departed Norfolk, Virginia? I'll have to look that up in a bit. Planning to spend 2 continuous months of discovery, training, scientific investigation in the Antarctic territory. The Navy's force of 13 ships, 23 aircraft, several helicopters, and over 4,000 men. Damn. I mean, okay. I know that's like not like compared to the armies of today. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but still, 4,000 men. That's a lot for that day. Constitutional large Antarctic expedition in history. Oh, that was the largest one in history. Moreover, it was the first naval-led expedition to Antarctica. Waters in nearly a century. Despite terrible weather conditions that damaged Byrd's support ships, the expedition succeeded in many of its intended objectives. The Navy successfully maneuvered a modern fleet in Antarctic waters, resembling in Little America 6. That must be like their 6th time going down there, I guess. Completed the jet-assisted, so they call it JATO, flight of 6 4Ds, Naval C-47 Skytrains. Skytrains? What the bollocks is a Skytrain? Like I said, there's always more than meets the eye. It looks like we've got something else to look into eventually. We'll get there. From the deck of an aircraft carrier to an unprepared snow service land field additional, despite early signs of an altered altitude-induced anxiety and temperatures of 40 degrees below zero. That makes me just feel cold just thinking about it. Byrd led 2 epochal flights beyond the South Pole into previously unexplored areas. Previously unexplored areas? What does he mean by that? Previously? He went into an area that we already was in. Never mind. I answered my own question. 60 additional flights produced thousands of hours of film, photography, documentary of Antarctica, uncharted coastlines, bays, and inland lakes. Inland lakes? What are they hiding? Seriously, what are they hiding? None of this shows up on Google Earth. Inland lakes? What are you hiding? A battery of test-helped naval personnel determine options, cold weather gear, electronics, avionics, and radio equipment, medicine, mechanized transport, probably just ships, food storage, cooking. Hold on a minute. Give me a moment, I've got to read something. But that doesn't make sense. It clearly states uncharted coastline, bays, and inland lakes. That's going to bug me. All right, continuing on. High technical helicopters, submarines. Okay, it's just after the lakes, it's just exploring. It's just explaining a bunch of areas. and the polar sea and land survival techniques for future explorations, highly technical helicopters, submarines, carriers, cruiser navigation throughout sea, ice beyond an icebreaker, a vessel, a vessel Bard currently claimed, ushered a revolutionary period of polar exploration, added to the high jumps achievements, to say nothing of the specific weather, biologic, geologic, and topographic tests undertaken during the exploration. Sorry, I was just a little taken back by hearing about, like, how there's, give me this, potentially lakes over there. Lakes that are inland. Why is the camera... Oh, excuse me, Mr. Camera, are you just stuck in this particular spot? I guess it's not following me now today. That's fine, I'll just keep bringing shit this way. We have another picture! Some of the exploration that they were doing. How intriguing. Oh, and then the camera wants to focus on me. Oh, work it. No, I'm joking. Okay. U.S. naval position, builded dust clear path through Antarctic snow to the facility to transport supplies. So pretty much supplies to the USS Yankee. Yay. Wow. Look at that. How ingenious. Interesting how they did all this exploration back in those days. Isn't it? Oh, now you want to follow me. Do you have a problem, Mr. Camera? You were focusing over there. Now all of a sudden you want to just stay on me? Well, okay then. Fine. I'm not pretty. I'm joking. Moving on. Alright, here we go again. The one that got away. The one that got away? Operation High Jump 2, 1949. That's an interesting start to this last section. The one that got away. How intriguing. Let's find out. The success of Operation High Jump prompted strategic planners to earmark the years of... I'm sorry, I thought I heard something in my room that was peculiar. Moving on. The year of 1947 to 1950 for the twin goals of ensuring the continuation of long-range preparation for the continuity of effort in Antarctica, and using the gained knowledge to improve the usableness and logistics support of the Greenland for military operations. It was not long before plans were in the works for another Arctic development project, Operation High Jump 2, which the approval of the Chief of Naval Operations. The expedition sought to emphasize the polar survival techniques, Let's just go on with it. I'm sorry. Just, it's literally spelled ASSESS. Asses. Okay, moving on. Cold weather equipment and building in a progressive made between 1946 and 47. It was scheduled to operate on October 1st, 1949. 7 months of intensive preparation and fundraising presented the project's official naval review. In the summer of 1949, Secretary of the Naval Louis Johnson argued that his peers, forced with the urgent necessity for an economy, agreed that the regular fleet training and fleet operations should take precedence over special and less essential requirements, acknowledging the good achievement during previous Antarctic explorations. Johnson remained aware of the unique position of the Antarctic as a proving ground for the cold weather military and naval techniques. However, the financial backing for the Byrd's second operation failed to materialize. On September 22nd, 1949, just before its intent departure, High Jump 2 was cancelled by civilian Undersecretary of Navy Dan Kimball? That sucks. Let's see what happens in this little story. High Jump 2's cancellation infuriated Byrd, prompting a barrage of telegrams, memos, and letters to Washington. Convinced civilian policymakers were failing to grasp the security implications of such an expedition, Russia successfully detonation of its own atomic bomb during the prospective operations review only sharpened Byrd's claim for the need of a more proactive polar national security policy. So that's when Russia to successfully do their test. Because of a nuclear strike would come over the North Pole, Byrd argued, one moment, that the American strategics now had to consider polar preparedness as a vital to national defense. 6 of the Americans' battleships and 3 of its SEX-class carriers could not fit through the Panama Canal in the event of Russian strike on the canal itself. Control of the waters between Cape Horn and Antarctica arose travelers and explored by previous Antarctic expeditions. I'm not gonna keep doing that. Let's bring that up. Explorations by previous Antarctic expeditions would be critical for the operation. Jeepers, this person likes to mix a lot of words together. Maneuverability. Byrd believed the government's cancellation of the naval's Antarctic intense initiatives would incur additional consequences. With over 6 million square miles of land, damn, that's a lot to think about. I almost want to go grab the globe. Shit. Byrd claimed Antarctica was probably the best cold weather providing grounds in the world for the testing of guided missiles. He argued the USSR would proceed uranium deposits for their own weapons in Antarctica. Wait, let me read that again. USSR would procure uranium deposits for their own weapons in Antarctica. You're making me ask a lot of questions. I've got so many more questions now. I find that funny. We read these articles, and they might answer a few questions of this and that, but it brings up so many more. Let's continue. Conversely, he believed the Poles could provide America with the coal and oil resources necessary to fuel a long-term war without relying on foreign powers in the event of material shortages. Finally, he articulated that more efficient polar radar and weather stations would facilitate land, sea, and air warfare over the top of the world. Let me quote that, actually. Byrd quoted this, over the top of the world, end quote. How intriguing. What just happened? I did not click on you, camera. Well, what did you do? Oh! One moment. Really? I'm sorry. It looks like the camera did a panorama of my room. My apologies. Damn thing. I'm gonna set this over here. My lord, that's hilarious. I'm just having a bunch of random moments tonight, aren't I? Moving on. Where was I? Okay. Shall we continue and find out what really happened? Well, according to this article, we don't really know what really is going on half the time to begin with. So it's hard to know if we should take this with a grain of salt or whatever. Who knows? Let's find out more. And speculate. That's the fun part. Byrd did not menace words in his defense of the high jump too. Quote, as I see, end quote. He wrote to the Secretary of the Navy, quote, insofar as preparationness of our own forces is concerned, we have to assume that we may have war with Russia, end quote. In the case of Byrd's presupposition, my gosh, I can't speak tonight, came true, he argued there would be hundreds of detached units in the Arctic, each expedition to possess the highly technical knowledge of polar travel, both on foot and in mechanized vehicles. Frustrated by my lord, I cannot speak tonight. Okay, it's spelled Parol. Parochial. Perichal. I'm gonna move on. American strategic polar planning confined to the Alaskan Treaty Operations. Alaskan Theater of Operations. He argued that with the technical inroads made during High Jump 1, the use of Greenland as ice cap for military and civil occupation was no longer a pipe dream. Interesting. That is very interesting, actually, that Greenland was no longer their pipe run. Moving on. With research conducted during High Jump 2, global highways could be developed for logistics support with improved surface transport equipment. Extreme weather missions would simulate, quote, wartime operations and conditions, end quote. And pilots would learn to make forced landings in Arctic conditions. Testing military gear and controlling Cold War conditions was not enough. Long-term polar projections were necessary to develop the, quote, ways and means of carrying out necessary operations in the Arctic, end quote. Quote, none of us wants to take a chance on unnecessarily losing thousands of lives, end quote. Byrd warned, quote, I urge you in the strongest terms not to allow to be thrown away months of preparation and a large quantity of cold weather technology equipment that has been assembled, end quote. The Navy moved on. By 1951, Byrd characterized the military stance towards the polar preparations as one of, quote, wide-scale abandonment as compared with the greatly increased activity of the Russians, end quote. From the military standpoint, he wrote it was, quote, shocking still the military's depart from the Antarctic development projects in its early 1950s did not represent a wholesome neglect of polar security. Stands by Byrd's thinking were adopted by the nation's security establishment in the various ways applied mostly in the Arctic. Is there an end quote there? Because I did not see a damn thing for an end quote. By the 1950s, the United States and Canada began to collaborate in a continued defense by sharing the Arctic research and scientific data. Military-funded collegiate programs furnished solutions to challenging transpolar Arctic warfare. Graduate students from this program staffed the first American Iceland research station built in 1952. The naval continued precedent set by Operation High Jump 1, monitoring polar sea and ice conditions and conducting year-round polar weather forecasting. Experts began to predict ice-free Arctic summers and a harboring of modern climate determination and warning of future conditions that would fundamentally alter, quote, whole economic strategic structure of country, end quote. Which country are they talking about there? High Jump 2 was off the table, but the U.S. military maintained its polar presence. Off the table, you say? Or did somebody else step in after we decided to say no? That's a good question. Let's find out. Continuing. Byrd's, quote, all-out assault on Antarctica. All-out assault. End quote. Byrd passed away in March 1957. Ironically, a time when, quote, the White House commitment to investigate the Arctic environment had reached an all-time high, end quote. In the wake of Stalin's death in 1953, the resolution of the Korean War, oh boy, the unification of the Soviet bloc countries in the Warsaw Pact, and West Germany admittance into NATO came to demand the attention of civilization and military officials. Lacking the economic means to prosecute a joint Arctic-Antarctic polar strategic on a level Byrd envisioned, polar affairs nevertheless remained a long-term peripheral issue. It was an issue, apparently. I can't say that other word. I'm going to move this to the side. I love that ability. Whoop. Sorry. Military, civilian, scientific collaboration, characterization, America's polar initiatives into the 1950s. Worries about the America's northern frontier led to the implementation of the Distant Earth Warning. Distant Early Warning? DEW? Line in 1954. Quote, the most advanced early warning network ever attempted, stretching from Alaska to Greenland, end quote. Concerningly, before his death, plans were diverged for what became Admiral Byrd's final act, the organization of Naval Task Force 43 to support international scientific efforts in preparation for the International Geographical Year, IGY, of 1955 to 56, departing for an Antarctic one last time in December of 1955 as part of the Operation Deep Freeze 1, end quote. Byrd and his men led to the groundwork for future naval support of American Antarctic scientific operations by constructing 3 permanent research bases and passing their polar knowledge onto a new generation of civilian scientists and naval personnel. The first International Geographic Year ensured in a new age of calibration, multinization, polar research, and that was continued unabated through the present day. This, quote, all-out assault on Antarctica, end quote, as National Geographic called it, set in motion in an annual traditional calibration polar scientific research. By the time IGY 1957 to 8, came around, the event had collected and analyzed exchange significant form the time Byrd reestablished American contact with the Antarctic. In 1955, there has been continuous American presence on the continent ever since. Wow, that was a mouthful. Woo! That was a mouthful. I might have to get a drink after this. Moving on. As geopolitical tensions throughout the Earth's polar regions continue to build, the strategical question of Byrd's day remains strongly relevant. While military encounters and political competition in the Arctic has grown dramatically in the last decades, the efforts of climate change, oh, fuck you, and the growing rivalry between the United States, China, and Russia. Oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that going on right now? Minus the first part. You guys know, actually, if you look this up, in one of the... Actually, I'll save that for the end. Has once more transported Antarctica into a strategical frontier worthy of renewed attention. Recently, General Corps Q. Brown, commander of the Pacific Air Force, noted the need for additional polar icebreakers, equipment, and training as quote, Antarctic competition will soon resemble in the United States rivalry with China and Russia in the North Pole. End quote. You gotta wonder. I mean, the timing couldn't be more interesting. I think I might have just found something out unintentionally. Well then, let's continue on. Were he alive today, Admiral Richard Byrd would continually have agreed. Today's brewing tensions in the Arctic and Antarctica are nothing new. Rather, they are dynamics and old frontiers invested with new strategic importance as geopolitical and... Hold on. Grab the damn thing. And increasingly... climate technology... Well, actually, climate technology is actually pretty good. Realities change. Everything bloody changes. Not as significant as you think, though, in certain things. As such, understanding our present polar security policy today hinges on a knowledge of its own past. Indeed, our own modern focus on international scientific collaboration and multinational joint readiness exercises, harnessing the polar region's national resources and mastering its transportation routes all originated in Admiral Byrd's post-war push for polar preparedness. His subsequent involvement in the shaping of Arctic security policy by advocating for the government-sponsored Antarctic research expeditions attest to the intervention nature of both poles. Quote, we got south to learn how to conquer the North Pole areas militarily, end quote. Byrd wrote, quote, and how to cope with the severe weather conditions of the long night, and his words serve, end quote, and his words serve as a timely reminder that the strategic competition at one end of the earth is almost always interstellarly bound to the other. And yes, I'm going to talk again. Here's something you got to know. This climate change scare that they're trying to throw on everybody, it's not as severe as they say. Because here's the funny thing. What if I told you it's getting colder? It's not getting warmer. Because the way they measure the samples is not by some random thing or this or that. They use very state-of-the-art devices. Very state-of-the-art. Very interesting. I kind of wondered, did I open up a can of worms? Because this actually made mention of the tension that's going on now, both nuclear and territorial, between us and Russia and China. How intriguing. I'm not even I don't even know if this is even conspiracy or theory, or more than it's probably just more than you believe, because of all the tensions. Just know, we are all going to be fine. Do not fret. I know it might seem like war is on the horizon, but to be honest, looking over all of this, I'd say it's been pushed off quite enough. In other words, I'm sure it's not going to be tomorrow. It's not that soon. I do gotta wonder, though, how much longer are we gonna keep this tension up between all of us? We're all human. Just a question and food for thought. Anyway, it seems we have more things to look into. I'm looking forward to seeing what else I have to figure out. Until next time, though, remember, it could be conspiracy, could be theory, or it could be more than you believe.